Have you ever felt that something in your life just doesn't add up? As if the reality you've always known is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Maybe you've sensed it in fleeting moments, questioning why you're here, why things happen the way they do, or why you sometimes feel an inexplicable pull towards something greater. You are not alone. This feeling is the first whisper of a deeper awakening. But here's the truth no one tells you: spiritual awakening isn't a blissful, euphoric experience that happens overnight. It's a journey, one that breaks you apart before it rebuilds you. Most people never make it through all the stages. Some get lost in illusions, while others retreat, clinging to their old identity out of fear. Today, we're uncovering the 5 hidden stages of spiritual awakening, including the one that almost no one reaches. As you listen, you might recognize yourself at one of these stages. But the real question is, will you keep going? Or will you turn back? Because once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. Stage 1, the sleepwalker. In this stage, life feels predictable, repetitive, almost mechanical. You wake up, go to work, follow the rules, and play your role in society. Everything seems normal because you've been conditioned to believe this is just how life is. But beneath the surface, something feels off. You feel disconnected from yourself, trapped in patterns of stress, anxiety, or unfulfilling desires. Deep down, you wonder, is this all there is? This is the state of unconscious living, where most people remain for their entire lives. The ego rules here, whispering fears, feeding insecurities, and convincing you that this is just the way things are. The worst part? You don't even realize you're asleep. But something is coming, a crack in the illusion that will change everything. This stage is deeper than it appears. It's not just about routine, it's about the false sense of self we've inherited. Society, culture, and past experiences shape an identity that we mistake for who we truly are. We define ourselves by our jobs, relationships, achievements, and failures, never questioning if these labels actually reflect our essence. Most people live and die in this state. They chase goals dictated by others, seeking external validation instead of inner fulfillment. Fear keeps them stuck: fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. They silence the small voice within that whispers, there is more. The few who begin to sense something beyond this illusion face a crossroads, ignore the calling and remain asleep, or step into the unknown. And once the illusion cracks, the unraveling begins. Stage 2, the trigger. When the illusion begins to shatter for some, awakening begins with a slow unraveling. For others, it arrives like an earthquake, sudden, violent, and impossible to ignore. A traumatic event, the loss of a loved one, a sudden realization, or even an unexplainable mystical experience can jolt you awake, making you question everything you once believed. In this stage, the world no longer feels solid. The beliefs you've clung to start to crumble. What once felt comforting, routines, societal expectations, even relationships, now feels empty. You begin to see the cracks in reality, realizing that much of what you accepted as truth was merely conditioning. This is where fear creeps in. The ego, sensing the loss of control, fights back. It whispers, maybe you're just overthinking. Maybe you're wrong. Just go back to normal. But you can't. Because once the illusion starts to shatter, there is no turning back. This stage is terrifying. The structures that once made life feel secure, belief systems, relationships, ambitions, suddenly feel like a fragile illusion. Many experience extreme emotions, anxiety, anger, sadness, even existential dread. It's common to feel like you're losing your mind. The logical mind desperately tries to hold on to the old reality, even as the soul pushes forward. This battle between ego and truth creates internal turmoil. Relationships may suffer as people around you don't understand what you're going through. Yet, despite the chaos, there's an unshakable feeling that you're on the right path. A deep knowing that this unraveling is necessary. Because only by deconstructing false beliefs can you begin to see reality as it truly is. Stage 3, the dark night, losing yourself to find yourself. If you choose to move forward, you enter what many call the dark night of the soul. This is where awakening becomes painful, where the self you once knew begins to dissolve. Everything that once gave you security, beliefs, relationships, identity, starts slipping away. You may feel lost, empty, or even hopeless. The structures that once defined you no longer make sense. The friendships that once felt solid may begin to fade. The dreams and ambitions that once excited you may now feel meaningless. This is the ego's death. And it is terrifying. At this stage, the ego fights harder than ever. It resists dissolution, clinging to any identity it can salvage. Fear intensifies. The mind becomes restless, searching for distractions, for anything that might restore the old sense of self. Many people turn back here. The pain is too much. The emptiness feels unbearable. They convince themselves that returning to old habits, relationships, or beliefs will make the suffering stop. And for some, it does, temporarily. But for those who press on, something profound happens. Amidst the emptiness, a new presence emerges, the true self. Not the self shaped by society, trauma, or fear, but the eternal essence that has always been there, hidden beneath layers of illusion. This moment is both terrifying and liberating. Because for the first time, you truly see yourself. And once you do, there is no turning back. At first, this stage feels like pure suffering. The ego mourns its own demise, and emotions fluctuate wildly. You might experience moments of deep clarity, only to be swallowed again by despair. The mind may resist, searching for something to grasp onto, an old belief, a familiar habit, anything that restores the illusion of control. But the longer you remain in this space, the more something profound happens. The pain starts to feel different. Not as something to escape, but as something to observe. The suffering is no longer just suffering, it is a teacher. You begin to detach from the emotions that once defined you. Fear, sadness, anger, they arise, but they no longer consume you. You start to witness them instead of being ruled by them. And this shift marks the beginning of your rebirth. The ego is no longer in charge. The real you, the one beyond thoughts, beyond conditioning, begins to emerge. A presence that is calm, unwavering, and infinitely wise. This is where the dark night starts to transform. It is no longer just destruction, it is the birth of something new. This is the moment where resistance meets surrender. Many people struggle here, desperately clinging to old beliefs, identities, or emotions in an attempt to regain a sense of control. But awakening demands absolute surrender, letting go of everything you thought you were. At first, this feels like free falling into an abyss. Fear whispers that you will be lost forever. But then, something miraculous happens, the fear dissolves. What once felt like death begins to feel like freedom. A deep peace emerges, one that isn't based on external circumstances but on the realization that you were never truly lost to begin with. The mind slows. Thoughts become lighter. Emotions pass through you without controlling you. You are no longer identified with the temporary experiences of life, you are the awareness behind them. In this stage, profound spiritual insights can arise. Some experience moments of bliss, as if touching something divine. Others feel an overwhelming sense of love, not just for themselves but for all beings. This is the true rebirth, not as a new identity, but as the formless essence that has always been there. Now, the question remains, what do you do with this newfound freedom? After surrendering to the unknown, something remarkable happens. The emptiness that once felt unbearable begins to feel like an open space, one filled with infinite possibility. The old identity is gone, but instead of despair, there is curiosity. If I am not who I thought I was, then who am I really? This stage is the rebirth of self-awareness. But unlike before, this self is no longer built on illusions or societal expectations. It is formed through deep inner knowing. The external world may not have changed, but your perception of it has. You start to move through life differently, more present, more aware, more connected to everything around you. It is here that many discover their true calling. Without the weight of past conditioning, you begin to feel drawn toward new passions, relationships, and ways of being that are in alignment with your soul. You no longer act from fear, but from inspiration. However, this transition is not without challenges. Friends, family, and society may still expect you to be who you once were. Some may question your newfound clarity. Others may try to pull you back into their version of reality. This is where the real test begins. Will you honor your transformation, or will you shrink yourself to fit back into the world's expectations? The journey is far from over. But for the first time, you are walking it fully awake. As you emerge from the ashes of the old self, you find yourself in a strange in-between state. The past no longer defines you, but the future is uncertain. You are no longer who you once were, yet you haven't fully stepped into who you are meant to be. This is the stage where many experience doubt, confusion, and even loneliness. You may start to feel disconnected from old friends, habits, and routines that no longer resonate. Some relationships may fade, while others may become sources of tension. The people around you may not understand your transformation, and you might feel pressure to return to your old ways. But something within you knows, there is no going back. At this point, you are walking between two worlds, the world of illusion and the world of truth. Every decision becomes a test. Will you honor your awakening, or will you allow fear to pull you back into unconscious patterns? This is where true spiritual strength is forged. You may also begin to attract new experiences, people, and synchronicities that align with your newfound awareness. The universe responds to your inner shift by bringing opportunities that challenge and expand your understanding. Pay attention, these moments are guiding you toward your next step. Yet, the greatest challenge of this stage is learning to trust yourself. The ego will try to create doubts and insecurities, whispering that you are lost, that you are making a mistake. But the truth is, you are closer than ever to true liberation. The next phase of the journey is about embodying this new awareness fully, not just understanding it intellectually, but living it completely. Stage 4, Integration, merging the old and the new. By now, you have crossed a threshold. You are no longer bound by the illusions that once dictated your existence, but you are still learning how to live in this new reality. This is the stage where many struggle to bridge the gap between their spiritual awakening and the physical world. Integration means taking what you've learned and applying it to everyday life. It's about balancing spiritual wisdom with real-world responsibilities, relationships, work, and personal growth. Many assume that awakening means abandoning the material world, but true spiritual growth happens within it. At first, this stage can feel like an internal tug-of-war. You might find yourself questioning how to function in a society that still operates on the old paradigms of fear, attachment, and illusion. You may even feel frustrated by the limitations of language. How do you explain what you've experienced to those who have not yet awakened? This is where patience becomes your greatest ally. Integration is a slow process, and the ego will still try to pull you back into old habits. But now, there is awareness. You are no longer reacting blindly to life. You are making conscious choices aligned with your higher self. The key lesson here is embodiment, becoming a living expression of the truths you've uncovered. It's not enough to understand awakening intellectually, you must live it through your actions, words, and presence. The external world does not change overnight, but your perception of it has, and that alone shifts your entire experience. As you begin to settle into this new way of being, something unexpected happens. You start attracting others who are on the same path. Like-minded souls, synchronicities, and opportunities begin to appear effortlessly. It is as if the universe is responding to your vibrational shift, guiding you toward your true purpose. But the journey is not over. One final stage remains, the most elusive, the most profound. As you continue to integrate your awakening, you face one of the hardest lessons of all: how to stay present in a world that still operates on illusion. The deeper your awareness grows, the more evident it becomes that much of society is still asleep. You may struggle with frustration, wondering how to engage with people who have not yet experienced what you have. This stage teaches you compassion and humility. Just as you once resisted awakening, others will too. Some will reject your transformation, while others may be inspired by it. But true embodiment means not forcing enlightenment onto others, it means leading by example. You do not need to convince anyone of your truth, you simply need to live it. Another challenge in this phase is maintaining balance. It can be tempting to retreat from the material world and seek isolation, believing that solitude is the only way to preserve your peace. But true mastery is about being in the world without being consumed by it. Spirituality is not about escaping life, it is about engaging with it fully, but from a place of deep presence and understanding. You begin to see that every experience, every challenge, and every interaction is an opportunity to embody your awakening. Whether it's dealing with difficult people, facing setbacks, or managing daily responsibilities, everything becomes a form of practice. The external world no longer dictates your state of being, you carry your peace within. At this stage, something else begins to happen: your intuition sharpens. You sense energies more clearly, you recognize patterns in life's synchronicities, and you trust your inner knowing more than ever before. Decision-making becomes effortless because you are no longer guided by fear, but by truth. Yet, there is still one final test, the last and most profound step of the awakening journey. Stage 5, the embodiment, becoming the awakening. This is the final and rarest stage of spiritual awakening, the point where there is no separation between your spiritual awareness and your daily life. At this level, enlightenment is not just something you understand, it is something you embody in every breath, every action, and every moment. The struggles that once consumed you lose their grip. Fear no longer dictates your decisions. You experience life with profound clarity, knowing that everything is interconnected, and that nothing is ever truly separate from you. The mind, once a constant battleground of thoughts and worries, now serves as a quiet tool rather than a master. At this stage, you radiate presence. Your energy alone influences those around you, not because you try to change them, but because you have become a reflection of truth itself. You no longer need to convince, prove, or explain, you simply exist in alignment with your highest self. Many who reach this stage feel an overwhelming sense of service. Not out of obligation, but from the realization that awakening is not just about personal liberation, it is about contributing to the awakening of the whole. Whether through teaching, healing, creating, or simply being a source of light, you naturally begin to uplift others without effort. But this is not the end of the journey, because in truth, the journey never ends. Awakening is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding. The deeper you go, the more there is to discover. And now, you are ready to live, not as a seeker, but as the embodiment of truth itself. As you settle into the final stage of spiritual awakening, something profound happens: you stop seeking. There is no longer a desperate need to find answers, because you realize that you are the answer. The mind, once filled with endless questions, grows silent. Not because it has been forced into stillness, but because it has surrendered to the vast, boundless awareness that exists beyond thought. This is the state of pure presence. You no longer perceive life through the lens of fear, expectation, or attachment. Instead, you experience reality as it is, fluid, interconnected, and ever unfolding. The concept of self dissolves into something much greater, an awareness that is not bound by time, identity, or limitation. One of the most striking aspects of this stage is the absence of resistance. Life flows effortlessly because you no longer fight against it. Challenges arise, but they do not shake you. Emotions pass through you, but they do not define you. Everything is seen as part of the greater dance of existence, and in this recognition, there is peace beyond anything the mind could have imagined. Yet, this is not a passive state, it is an active engagement with life from a place of deep wisdom. Decisions are made not from fear, but from intuitive knowing. Relationships are no longer driven by need, but by unconditional love. Even the most mundane activities become infused with a quiet, sacred presence. At this level, many find themselves drawn to a new way of serving the world. Some become teachers, guides, or healers, not because they seek recognition, but because truth naturally radiates outward. Others express their awakening through art, innovation, or acts of kindness, knowing that every action ripples through the collective field of consciousness. There is no final destination in awakening, only deeper layers of realization. And as you embody this truth, you see that enlightenment was never about escaping life. It was about fully immersing yourself in it, with eyes wide open. As you embody awakening, a realization emerges that shifts everything: you were never separate from existence. The illusion of individuality dissolves, revealing a vast, interconnected web of life where everything is in perfect harmony. This is the stage of oneness, where you see beyond the mind's habitual tendency to categorize, compare, and divide. The trees, the sky, the people around you, everything is an extension of the same divine consciousness. You are no longer merely an observer of the universe, you are the universe experiencing itself through human form. With this realization, fear loses its grip completely. There is no longer a sense of needing to control life because you now trust the intelligence of existence itself. The ego, once desperate to create an identity, now takes a back seat. The need for validation, success, or security fades into insignificance as you rest in the profound peace of simply being. This stage does not mean you withdraw from the world, in fact, it is quite the opposite. You engage with life fully, but from a state of effortless flow. Challenges may still arise, but they no longer shake you. Pain may still be felt, but it no longer defines you. You recognize that all experiences, whether joyful or difficult, are temporary waves in the vast ocean of consciousness. At this point, love becomes your natural state. Not the conditional love that depends on relationships, achievements, or circumstances, but an unshakable love that arises from within. Compassion flows freely, not because you force it, but because you see yourself in all beings. The barriers between self and other no longer hold meaning. You no longer feel the need to chase happiness because you realize that what you were searching for was never outside of you, it was always within. And as this awareness deepens, so does the understanding that awakening is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of truly living. Now, life takes on a completely different quality, one that is rooted in flow, trust, and presence. You no longer experience yourself as a separate being struggling to survive in a chaotic world. Instead, you move through life with grace and ease, knowing that everything unfolds exactly as it should. This is the essence of effortless living. Decisions arise naturally, without overthinking. Creativity flows freely, unblocked by doubt or hesitation. You are no longer weighed down by the need to control, because you trust the intelligence of existence itself. Instead of forcing outcomes, you allow life to unfold through you, as you. There is no more resistance, only deep acceptance. This does not mean that difficulties disappear, but they no longer define your experience. Challenges arise, and you meet them with curiosity rather than fear. Emotions come and go, but they do not shake the foundation of your peace. Even in the face of uncertainty, you remain rooted in trust. One of the most profound shifts in this stage is how you relate to time. The mind, once obsessed with the past and future, settles into the eternal now. There is no rush, no urgency, just the unfolding of each moment as it is. You realize that life was never meant to be a struggle, it was meant to be experienced fully, with openness and wonder. With this shift, the final veil begins to lift. The illusion of personal identity fades completely, revealing something far greater: you are not just an individual on a journey, you are the journey itself. At this stage, the final remnants of the ego dissolve completely. The personal identity, once so carefully constructed over years of conditioning, fades into the background. The labels you once clung to, your name, your status, your beliefs, no longer feel as real as they once did. What remains is something infinitely vast, pure awareness, boundless and free. This is the moment of ego death, not in a tragic sense, but in the realization that the self you believed yourself to be was never permanent. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not even the body you inhabit. You are something beyond all of that, something that cannot be named, but only experienced. In this space, life is no longer personal. There is no longer a you struggling against the current, because the current itself is you. The separation between subject and object disappears. Everything simply is. At first, this can feel disorienting. The mind might try to reassert itself, to grasp onto some fragment of identity. But as you surrender fully, fear dissolves into deep, unshakable peace. There is nothing to protect, nothing to defend. You exist, but not as a limited being, you exist as consciousness itself. From this perspective, love takes on a new meaning. It is no longer something you give or receive, it is the fundamental fabric of reality. Compassion flows effortlessly because you recognize yourself in all things. There is no longer self and other, there is only the infinite, witnessing itself through infinite forms. This is true liberation. And yet, the journey is not over. There is still one final step before you return to the world, not as who you once were, but as something entirely new. After experiencing the dissolution of the ego, a paradox emerges: you must now return to the world. But the world is no longer the same, and neither are you. The structures, beliefs, and attachments that once dictated your life have lost their power over you. Instead of being ruled by the mind, you now navigate existence with clarity, fluidity, and deep presence. This stage is about integration, taking the wisdom you've gained and applying it to everyday life. True awakening is not about escaping reality, it is about engaging with it from a place of unwavering inner peace. You interact with people, fulfill responsibilities, and move through the world, but now with a profound sense of freedom. You are in the world, but no longer of it. This can be a challenging transition. You may find yourself in environments that still operate on fear, competition, and illusion. But instead of feeling disconnected or superior, you meet everything with compassion. You no longer judge others for being asleep, because you understand, awakening happens in its own time for everyone. Your presence alone begins to shift those around you. People may feel drawn to your calmness, your clarity, your lack of attachment to external validation. Without needing to preach or convince, you naturally become a guide for those who are beginning their own journey. Life becomes effortless, not because challenges disappear, but because your resistance to them does. You no longer chase happiness, it arises naturally. You no longer fear loss, you understand that nothing real can ever be lost. There is no longer a rigid self that clings to control, only the flow of life moving through you. And then, in one final realization, you see the truth that was hidden all along: there was never anything to become, only something to remember. At this point, there is nothing left to search for. No more questions to answer. No more fears to overcome. You realize that you were never separate from the universe, you are the universe, experiencing itself through human form. There is no seeker because there is nothing to seek. This is the ultimate surrender. A surrender not to an external force, but to the natural flow of existence itself. You no longer resist what is. Whether joy or pain, gain or loss, life unfolds exactly as it should, and you embrace it with open arms. In this state, everything is sacred. The simple act of breathing, of watching the sunrise, of sharing a moment with a stranger, each experience is imbued with deep presence and gratitude. Nothing is mundane, because everything is an expression of the divine. You see beauty everywhere, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The old self is no longer in control, but this does not mean life becomes passive. On the contrary, you engage with it more fully than ever before. Actions arise naturally, guided by intuition rather than fear. Love flows freely, not as an emotion, but as your fundamental state of being. You are not just living, you are being lived by life itself. At this stage, the mind is quiet, the heart is open, and the soul is at peace. There is nothing left to attain because you see that you were always whole. And so, you return to life. But not as who you once were. You return as life itself. You have crossed the final threshold. But here's the greatest paradox of all: awakening is not an ending, it is a beginning. The journey never truly stops because consciousness is infinite. With each moment, life continues to reveal deeper layers of truth, expanding beyond anything the mind can grasp. Now, you live in a state of effortless presence. There is no longer a sense of separation between you and life itself. Every interaction, every challenge, every experience is met with profound acceptance and clarity. You no longer resist the unfolding of events, you move with them, like a river flowing effortlessly toward the ocean. At this stage, life is no longer about doing, it is about being. Each step you take, each word you speak, each breath you inhale is infused with deep awareness. You do not seek purpose, because you realize that simply existing is purpose enough. You see that enlightenment was never about reaching a destination, it was about remembering who you truly are. And now, you are free. Free from the illusions, free from the fears, free from the need to be anything other than what you already are. Pure awareness, infinite and eternal. And so, the journey continues, not as a search, but as an unfolding. Not as a struggle, but as a dance. Not as an escape from life, but as a full immersion in its mystery. You are awake. You are home. And you always were. If the path is open to all, why do so few reach the final stage? The answer lies not in the path itself, but in the obstacles that arise within. The first challenge is fear. Fear of losing who you were. Fear of stepping into the unknown. Many prefer the comfort of illusion over the uncertainty of truth. The idea of letting go of their identity, their attachments, and everything familiar is simply too much to bear. Then comes the challenge of surrender. The ego resists its own dissolution. It fights to survive, clinging to labels, achievements, and external validation. Few can truly release control. Fewer still trust what lies beyond. The world itself becomes an obstacle. Society is designed to keep people asleep, entertainment, materialism, and endless distractions serve as barriers, pulling them away from deeper awareness. Only those who learn to silence the noise can hear the truth within. And finally, the greatest challenge, the death of the ego. The final step demands absolute surrender, the willingness to dissolve completely, to exist without attachment, without identity, without need. Most hesitate at this precipice. They look down into the abyss, and turn back. This is why only 1% reach the final stage. Not because it is hidden, but because few are willing to let go of everything holding them back. But for those who do, there is no fear. No resistance. Only stillness, clarity, and the vast expanse of existence itself. The path does not end. It never ends. Because awakening is not reaching a final stage, it is the realization that there was never anywhere else to be. The end, or just the beginning.